Hello, welcome.
Welcome. We're here. We made it.
Woo, we made it. Thank y'all for waiting. We had some technical difficulties. It was a little wild, but we got it worked out. So thank you guys for joining us for the live Q&A for the poetry panel.
I love what you do with your arms. It's like a Squidward type of
Nice.
Matrix feel.
I'm trying to keep the attention. Keep the attention. It's crowd speaking 101 there. So, because we promised you that we would do a poem every Wednesday, we are going to kick this thing off with that to kind of get the muse of flowing and going in the room. So before we start, I want to let y'all know we are broadcasting live from the wonderful and incredible conference room at Time Out Youth, which is an amazing organization that helps teens and young adults in the LGBTQ community find a safe place to be themselves, to grow, to find opportunities, and also house them if they are lacking in a house, a home. So it's an incredible place. So definitely look them up, check them out. Their name is Time Out Youth. Yeah. So we're very thankful that we get to use the space today. You want to go first with this poem?
I always want to go first because I never want to be shown up. Again, thank you for the 2 viewers that were patiently standing by and waiting as we got our technical issues resolved. So I was doing an edit for 30 this month. So this poem is older, probably 2 years old. I just never figured out what I wanted to do with it. So this is the current iteration. What if being a man allowed for emotion? It would be like hearing the grass grow or the squirrel's heartbeat, and we should die of that roar, which is the other side of silence. George Eliot. I don't cry anymore since Dad died, and only once then. Our mourning is quiet, stealthy like pause before bad news, an inherited trait near as I can tell. We're all instinctually stoic and hidden, brackish bodies damned at the gates. My last uncle just passed away, also of cancer, and Tyrone and I discussed this too as inheritance, the need for annual x-rays to hunt what would prey on us. Random memories flood mind of fishing trips and nickel poker, except my grief has substituted his face for my brother's and Dad's for mine. The news was expected, but my son's first time sinking a hook in ocean water was with him just a few months ago, and we split a can of High Life and hovered over the entrails of a sausage sandwich and laughed at everything, and he was the last of his brothers and the closest thing to seeing Dad again. I breathed deep and slow, like a big cat when blood is in the air or the ground. Dropped the phone on the bathroom floor. Slide down the wall against the shower door, like an avalanche crashing down a glass mountain. Head cupped in open palms and become a prayer built on bad knees. Become swinging jaw, unhinged. Become throttle and throat and roar. Remember, of course, my pride.
Ooh, very nice work, Jay.
Thank you.
Very nice work. I love the connections in that piece and the certain word choices that you used that made it feel very epic. Very, very epic. That was a beautiful way to take like a personal experience and add this epic scenery to it from something that's like just a bathroom door. You know what I mean? Very nice. So I will go next. So since we promised that we would do a poem every Wednesday, we're going to kick this thing off with that. And then we'll get into this list of questions. And boy, did y'all have some questions for us. We got like, how many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
a
7.
buku,
We got
a plethora, a cornucopia, a many, a plenty. I'm trying to think of other synonyms.
That's poem.
A buttload. That's probably not the best one.
A buttload.
That's my Bart Simpson synonym.
I would totally buy a book of Bart Simpson's poetry.
Or like a Bart Simpson thesaurus.
Oh yes.
It'd be great.
Just the 90s. Yes. Okay. All right. So this is a new piece I wrote the other day. New. I've been going through like a really weird, I wouldn't call it a transitional phase, but just like a kind of like a darkness. We all have our ups and downs. So this is part of writing myself out of it. I refuse to be a lie in a lion's mouth. You know, the way cats also purr when in pain. And people can't seem to tell the difference. They used to say things to me like, it takes less muscles to smile than it does to frown. And I'd say, I guess that makes me stronger than you. The last time I listened to Korn's Here to Stay, I was sitting in an iced over car during college, volume on full blast, holding an X-Acto knife to my wrist. Kenny wouldn't leave me alone till I unlocked the car door, and he climbed in the passenger seat, asked me for the knife. I gave it to him, and he just sat in silence with me while I cried. The song was nearing the end, the point when the drums start pounding so hard that you can feel your heart splintering its knuckles, trying to beat itself out of its own cage. When I realized at some point you got to make peace with your own suffering. There are certain types of pain that you have to learn to live with. Tonight, 19 years later, I am watching the lights flash like a revolver on the overpass above bumper-to-bumper traffic, while the darkness threatens to seep out of me like a purring throat, and I don't want to fight it back. All I want is to let it spread like the frost on a car, a cold pain strong enough to crack a windshield's reflection. A man beside me is screaming into his steering wheel when the song returns on the Sirius XM Turbo channel, and without thinking, I turn the volume all the way up, feel myself collapse in the chorus. I want it to break me, bring it down. There are some types of pain that you move aside for. Let it take up the space it needs. Sometimes there's too much bleeding for the both of us. You've taken everything. Sometimes you got to give in when you can't give anymore. Grace is hard when human, wrapped up in our own hells. While a mile and a half down the road, someone is having the worst day of their life, possibly their last, while we can't get to our own deaths fast enough. I don't want the song to finish. I realize the past is no different than the present, except there is no Kenny. Just a man next to me screaming his own lyrics and his own suffering, and I wonder what it is I need to make peace with at this moment. White-knuckled in traffic, trying not to break down when all I want is to break down, just a lie in a lion's mouth above a purring engine, realizing again, all these years later, that no matter how far I've come, no matter what I've learned, there are some types of pain that are just here to stay.
Mm. Wow. So the first thing I noticed immediately is the symmetry between our two pieces, because the original imagery that I was using was a lion.
Right.
I just didn't say lion, but so that was really great. But also the imagery that you used in that was stunning. I thought like the way you opened it up, kind of not whimsical, but like, you know, this just observation, and then once it goes deep and heavy, it goes deep, and we're able to kind of examine our own lives through the questions that you asked there.
Yeah, it was a really interesting one to write because I was stuck in traffic, and I was really eager to get home. And then my first thought was, well, I need to just chill out because the person in front of me who is in this wreck is having a way worse, day than I am. But then it made me also realize that you can't weigh your own hells. And I was hurting and all this. And then I happened to look over and this man was just like, oh, let's go already. And I was like, I'm not alone. So it was an interesting one to write. And it did make me feel better. So writing is therapy. Yes. So you ready to get into these questions, y'all? I know you're eager. We have tons of them. So we have a lot of ground to cover.
I have a question for you before we do the questions.
Yes.
Okay. So we're a little over halfway through National Poetry Month. We're a little halfway through this 30 for 30. Yeah. I think this is about the time when people start running out of ideas, right? So you've been writing poems all month, and now what do I do now? I feel like I've exhausted the things I was going to write about. What's the next thing? How do you deal with that?
So that's a very interesting question because, I was doing an edit and a new poem a day, and I got frustrated with the editing part, and I kind of just let that, simmer, and I took a step back away from that. So I've got some like catch ups to do for the editing, but I hit a point where I feel like I'm tired of editing the themes of this poem. And I think that anytime you do anything where it's like, okay, I'm going to work on a theme so that I'll have, a book by the end of 30 for 30 instead of just a bunch of random poems, or, you're editing poems a day so that you'll get a step closer to publishing that book or that album, whatever it is that you want to achieve at the end of the month. It's almost like oh my gosh, like things are still happening to me. I don't want to focus on this anymore. And so I've ran into that. And the thing that I have to remind myself is the end goal, So like being able to visualize staying on track and like what the purpose is of everything. So the poems I've been editing is for that book, Road Hunger. And as much as I love the highway and as much as I love, to travel, I have been exhausted the past few weeks. And I'm like, I don't feel like wanderlust. I feel like laying on the couch and eating a bag of potato chips. And, so it's hard to get in the zone when you've got this conflict of, you don't feel like working on that. But then I have to remember like the outcome of getting this book where it needs to be, or what my goal is. That pushes me to come back to it. So I think if you know what your goal is for April, that helps keep you going, and it helps fuel like the new ideas to find a way to push through. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you? How are you right now in April?
Well, it doesn't apply as much to me because I'm doing edits instead of new poems. But this is my third or fourth year. This sun has hit me just right. This is my third or fourth year, and what I normally do when I hit that part is I start experimenting with form. I find a way to make it fun. If I can't think of a topic and nothing comes to mind, then I will either do what Thomas Fucalaro has been doing, which is find unique headlines and then write a poem based on the headline, or I will play with form and I will try to find forms that I haven't used before, some obscure form. I think one year I did a Fibonacci sequence poem as a form, and that's just a way to make it fun for me until I can springboard other ideas.
Right, definitely. And y'all, if you ever get stuck with not knowing what to write about, there are tons of prompts. I know in the National Poetry Month Summit, there are 7 prompts a week that get sent out. And if you don't like any of those, it's totally okay. You don't have to use them. Like, you can just Google poetry prompts, and there are a ton that will come up. And I think the people who created the National Poetry Month celebration in itself, in New York, has their own list of prompts for the whole month as well. So there's definitely resources out there. You can always Google poetic forms too and pick one from there, like Jay was saying. So definitely. Yeah. All right.
All right. Questions.
Let's get into this. All right. Question number 1 we have: how do I grow in my writing? How do you not? There are so many ways. Up. Yes. So just a few things off the top of my head that I know for a fact works. Reading other poets and seeing how they use language, how they use form, how they use line breaks, getting ideas on how other poets write, that also will help you grow. Challenging yourself. Definitely challenging yourself. The 30 for 30 challenge. Picking prompts that you normally wouldn't lean towards. So like things that are outside of the subject matter you usually write about, whether it be like, maybe it's a comedy poem, things like that definitely help. And experiencing life. A lot of poets forget this one. As poets, we write about life. And if you're not experiencing life, then you're going to feel very frustrated and very empty very quickly. So getting out in the world and experiencing new things and being observant of life itself will definitely help you grow, because the more you focus on what's happening around you and the beauty that is you're constantly being surrounded by that you might not notice, just that subtle beauty, will definitely help you expand your mind and your senses to grow your writing as well.
Yeah, all those answers were perfect. I think maybe I'll reiterate, like if you want to grow in your writing, read. If you want to be a better writer, read. I would definitely recommend reading 3 times as much as you write, in the field that you want to be better in. Like if you want to be a better poet, then read a lot of poetry. It does not. I think some people don't because they feel like it's gonna affect their voice. But it doesn't. If anything, it enhances it, and it allows you to find your voice by seeing what the possibilities are, and really get you thinking along a certain line. You're going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I've heard that from poets. Like they don't read other poets, they don't listen to other poets. There's been some slam poets I know that will, like even though they need to pay attention to the scores, there's a few slam poets I know that will just leave and not listen to the poet until it's their turn to go. And they're doing themselves a huge disservice by that, because there's so much that you can absorb and learn from another person's writing and their technique, and also their stage presence as well. And it doesn't mean that you're copycatting them. Artists do this as well. Like if there's a technique that they want to learn, like whether it be impressionism, they will mimic the style of that artist for a while until they get that technique down. And then they do their own artwork and original ideas based off of that. So we have to remember that in poetry, it's no different. Like there are different poetry forms and there are different poetry techniques, and no one owns the rights to those. That is the tools that you use in order to create your work. So it's not like you're copycatting anyone's voice, because you are going to be the one that speaks, and there will definitely always be a difference in that. Your voice is always going to be the voice that comes through. So yeah,
I think one more that a lot of poets are resistant to is editing. If I've talked to a lot of poets that don't believe in editing, and if that's your thing, then cool, that's your thing. I will say from my personal experience, I've always been the kind of person to edit while I write. And what broke me out of that was when I first started performing poetry here in Charlotte, everybody was telling me, that was so good. Like, you're good. That's good. And I wasn't breaking the ceilings that I wanted to break, right? I was good, but I wasn't C.P. Mays. I wasn't Ed Mabry. I wasn't blues. You know what I mean? I was good. And one day I was writing a poem, and I got the draft where I wanted it, the first draft, and I said, this is good. And then I asked myself why that was good enough. Why was I willing to stop at good? People have already been telling me I'm good. Why is that okay for me?
Right.
So then I edited that draft, and I took it, and it was good. And then I took it again and edited it again, and it was good. And I finally got it to the point where it was better than good, or at least better than what I was used to doing. And once I did that, I didn't turn back from that. There was a time where I was writing 7 or 8 drafts of a poem before it was done.
Yeah.
I think that's come down for me only because I've gotten so used to knowing what will pass for me, or what my standards are, that I've kind of adjusted things so it doesn't take me as many drafts now to get to where I want to get to. But yeah, I feel like poets are sometimes resistant to reading other poets and sometimes resistant to editing their own work. So those are my suggestions.
Yeah, definitely. And I was one of those poets, y'all. I was one of those that was like, no, it's pure. It's a holy, beautiful thing. Don't touch it. Don't mess with it. This is the way God intended it to come out, And it was like, but I think at the end of the day, I realized that I was intimidated by the editing process, because at the time I didn't know what editing entailed. Like I didn't know what line breaks to use. I didn't know what words to take out. And that's actually what led me to start slamming, because I used to be huge against slam too, which is competition for poetry. But it really pushed me to edit, because you only got 3 minutes and you really want that poem to clock in at 250, 240, so you have time to play it, to get into it. So it pushes you to cut out the fat It pushes you to be a little bit more direct and also clever with your lines so that you're hitting some good punchlines. And that's when I realized, like, oh man, I need to edit a lot of stuff. Like, I have to go back and like really look at my work. And I was intimidated by the editing process because there's so many different things that you can do. And I had to get comfortable with allowing myself to have, 8, 12 different versions of one poem, that there was nothing wrong with that. I just had to make sure I keep it organized. And there's nothing wrong with doing a poem one place, like say you're on stage and you do this version, but you submit another version to get published. It's actually a very smart thing to do instead of just keeping one style of that poem and trying to use it on multiple platforms that might not work for that platform. So yeah, I had to get comfortable with editing. Yeah. That will also help you expand your writing too, because while you're editing a poem, you might realize that there's a whole entire another poem in that.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times. So
you could also watch just by editing. If you are a poet who's just starting out or doesn't write a lot or often, that's a way to expand your work as well. So yeah. Our second question: how do you know when you're ready to release your book to the world? I'll let you start.
Wow. So that's one of those questions like I think Marquis is
here. We're gonna have a third joining.
Yes. That's one of those questions like when people ask, how do you know a poem is ready? I mean, it's very subjective. Yeah. And I think for me, maybe it depends on what your purpose is. If your purpose is to have a book on the shelf that's written by you, which was my purpose for my first self-published book, then when you are happy with it, when you're happy with every poem and every word and all those things, and this represents exactly what you wanted to represent, I think then it's ready. It depends on if you have a different purpose. What's your answer?
Definitely. So this is Marquis Love, everybody. Yes. He's a guerrilla poet, amazing writer and performer as well. Marquis, the world. So the question is, how do you know when you're ready to release your book to the world?
Ooh.
And for me, I feel like you have to know like where that question is coming from. If that question is coming from a place of fear, like, I don't know if I'm good enough, I don't know if people will read this, I don't know if it's worthy, then you're ready. That fear is not a reason why you should hold on to your work. But if you've been editing a lot and a lot and a lot, and you've played with these poems to the point where you just don't even know where it is anymore, always at that point, please take a break and then come back to the work and look at it. And what I like to do is also keep a goal, like written somewhere in my house or above the files, that just says like, this is what I want the purpose of this book to be. So like you were saying, that you'll know when it's ready if that goal for that book and what you want that book to say is reaching that goal. The other thing I feel like is take your time, because a lot of times I feel like we rush to get it out there as well. And that's my issue right now that I'm facing, is that I'm sitting on so much work that I want to push it out there and get it out there and get it done. But I know deep in my heart that it's not ready. So sometimes you just have to sit with the work and really just sit with it and ask yourself, do I feel like I've done what I need to do with this, where it is? You know what I mean? What do you think?
Well, actually, those were good points for me because I'm not published yet.
Yeah.
However, I completely 100% agree with that. When you're afraid of it, that's the perfect time for you to go ahead and push forward.
Mm-hmm. And that makes me realize too, you're gonna grow in your writing. So your first book is not gonna be the same level. And when I say level, I don't mean like by any standard, but by your own standard. your first book is not gonna look like what your fifth is gonna look like. And you want that. You want your audience to be able to see the growth. So if your first book has some mistakes or you felt like you could have done the line breaks better, no matter, like at the end of the year or whatever, after your book's been out for a while, you are more than likely going to go back and read that book and be like, man, I could have done this, I could have done that. Don't get wrapped up in that. Just know that that's part of the process, that you can apply those new things you've learned and that growth that you have to the next book, because you really do want your books to show your progress. So, yeah. All right, y'all. We have 2 questions that are kind of similar. So I kind of just like tied them both together. So this was from 2 different people, and it's kind of the same thing. So how do I book shows, or how do I book performances?
I'll start. I'm assuming that the person asking this question is asking from a performance standpoint, like is a performance poet. So the local scene is always the best way to get started at first. So if there are open mics at your scene that feature poets, then being a regular at that open mic, not leaving after you do your own poem, but being a regular there and supporting everybody. And then as your poetry grows, the host of that venue, when they think you're ready, will usually approach you about featuring there. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen. So sometimes it's okay to ask, the person that runs that venue, whether you're ready or ask them for a feature. Now, beyond that, if you want to do, go somewhere else, then put together a press kit with your bio, with pictures that are downloadable, high-res pictures that are downloadable, and then preferably links to video of you performing. If you have a website already, it's very easy to make that into an electronic press kit and have a link directly to it. If you don't have a website yet, you can put it together in like a PDF or something that can be emailed easily with links to video. And then find venues that you want to go to. Find the contact for that booking. Write a very short professional email that simply says who you are, that you want to feature for them. Here's your information. And if you have a window of time, that's also very helpful, because some venues book a couple of weeks in advance, some a few months, but there's some venues that book a year in advance. Yeah. So it's very helpful to let them know when you're available and when you think you want to come and feature.
Definitely. You definitely need a press kit. Pro tip for some of you that don't have a website and aren't looking to take that step yet to invest in yourself, because it is an investment. Once you get your marketing and your brand up and running, you will get that money back and it will pay for itself. But when you're first starting out, you can use MailChimp. MailChimp is free, and you can create a landing page on MailChimp, and you can put your videos, your downloadable photos on there, your bio, and big tip on this too. If you don't have a poetry video, please don't have somebody in the back of the room recording you live at some event where there's murmuring and there's things happening and you're fuzzy. Literally just take your cell phone, find a quiet place, set your cell phone up, and record yourself to where it could be professional. It doesn't have to be you holding a mic in a venue with this huge crowd. People are going to see the quality before they see the crowd and all of that. We just need to be able to hear your voice and hear it clear enough to know the quality of your work and your performance. So sometimes it's not even about the work. It's about how you own a stage and how you have the ability to connect with your audience. So don't be afraid to record yourself on your phone, and go ahead and get you some videos up, because you're going to need that. They want to be able to hear you and see how you are when you're speaking your poetry. So definitely get a page up. You can do a PDF, definitely. That's something that you can do. I love landing pages because they're easier. It's just a link that you can just send somebody and you don't have to worry about it. Another thing that you can do is, like he was saying, don't be afraid to ask, but also please support too. So, and don't take it personally either. Some venues, they've been running for a long time, and I'm sure y'all have gone into an area that already has its own crew, and you're the new person, right? And you walk in, you kind of feel a little like, I don't know if I'm welcome here. I don't know if, don't let that deter you. It's nothing personal. It's just that's the vibe that it was already created, and you just have to learn your way around that environment as well. And when you show other poets support and you show the venue support locally, they will support you in turn. And if you want to do shows and do a tour, get booked in other states, you are going to need to show that you have supporters. It's the same thing with Instagram, right? So if I look up somebody on Instagram and they only have like 40 followers, right? But this other poet has like 1,000 some. I don't even have 1,000 yet, but I'm not on Instagram a lot. And they could showcase that they have a fan base. You are more than likely going to get booked than someone who can't prove that they have a fan base. So reviews are a great thing to put on your press kit, even if it's like, somebody that has read your poetry or something like that. If you can be more specific and get someone that has like a high following in the community to review you or send you a review, that's better. But just having a review that says, man, this poet is powerful and I would book this poet without question, that also shows credibility and trust as well. So keep that in mind. Those are really cool things to have on your press kit. No.
Don't let ego ruin your opportunities. Don't be afraid to go to a venue that there may be only like 5 or 10 people to show up, and you turn that venue down because of how small the crowd is. Like that could ruin your opportunities because those people will remember that in the future. So don't expect to perform in front of a crowd of 100 when you're afraid to perform in front of a crowd of like 5 or 10.
Right.
Yeah,
definitely. And you never know who's in that audience either. So even if there's just one person sitting in that audience, that one person could be a huge booking agent or could have a contract ready for you or a publisher, so always, no matter if it's 1 or 100, you give it your all, because that has happened. That has happened before. Yeah.
Before we go to the next question, when you were talking, you used the word investment, and it reminded me of something. The first question: how do I grow in my writing?
Yes.
We talk about this a lot. Sometimes as poets, and particularly in the spoken word community, like we don't invest in ourselves. Mm-hmm. If there's a writing workshop, it doesn't have to be free for you to go to it. Mm-hmm. If it costs $10, pay $10. If there's something in the community college going on and maybe it costs a little more to register, invest in your writing. Workshops are incredibly helpful. And I'm not just talking about a writing prompt. I'm talking about workshops where you are learning something and more importantly, you are around a community of writers that you're not necessarily around. And for me, writing around writers is a completely different experience than writing home alone. Like the energy that is created and the synergy that's happening while nobody's talking and we're just in a 20-minute session of writing is a completely different thing. So grow in your writing by being willing to invest in yourself, the time for workshops, the supplies that you might need, travel in some cases, be willing to invest in yourself.
There's tons of like retreats. I'm leading retreats this year as well. There's other like opportunities where you can pay and you go out there for a week and you take workshops and you learn, you get to bounce ideas off of other poets. There are tons of opportunities out there for you to invest in yourself. And there is a difference between an investment and just debt. There's a difference. If I pay an editor and I want a professional editor to look over my book and make sure that there's no mistakes and things like that, and that editor charges me $400, that $400 is an investment because I'm more than likely going to sell more books because the book was done correctly. So if you are, if you're very, how do I say this? consciously aware of your cash.
Consciously.
Consciously aware of your cash. You
Or
can
broke.
or broke. I just say that, or broke. You can always budget it out. So the last editor I hired, I had to figure out, okay, how many books do I need to sell in order to be able to pay for the editor? And once I figured that out, now I have a goal. So, okay, once I sell this many books, then everything else is profit. So you can lay it out like that if, it makes you feel a little uneasy. Because investing in yourself can be a little scary because you're not going to see the returns right away sometimes. Usually they come later, but that's what investments are. But you can always lay it out on paper so that you can look and remind yourself like, okay, all I have to do is this and I'll be fine. And it gives you some peace of mind as well. But yeah, writing workshops, retreats, even hiring a mentor. We'll get into that later. Poetry coaches. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And there are meetups around town as well.
Mhm.
Just like Jay Ward was saying, just getting in the company of other writers.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Build your tribe. Get up with some friends and sit down and talk about like where you want to go with your work. That's what we do. All right. Next question. What's the best way to memorize your poems? Pace, pace, pace. I'm a huge fan of pacing when I recite, and I break a line down. So I'll take one line and I'll pace and I'll say that line over and over and over and over again until I don't have to look at the paper anymore. And if the line is tricky and there's like some wordplay that's in there, maybe a lot of alliteration, I'll break the line in half and I'll just focus on the first half. Y'all, it works. I didn't find out until years later that pacing stimulates a part in your brain that is associated with memory. And I had always paced when I memorized my work, but I didn't realize that what I was doing was actually a memorizing technique. Now I can memorize a 2-page poem in like an hour and a half. You'll be tired. I will warn you about that. Like your legs will be hurting, but it works. Any other tips?
All right. So I will tag onto that, and then I'll tell you what I do, because what I do is different because my memory sucks. But I recently learned, and I can't recite it because I need to write it down and finish researching it. But using different modalities, engaging all the senses, triggers the brain and helps you remember things. So when you are physically walking around, that movement helps. When you are saying the words out loud, you are hearing them. When you're reading from the paper, you are visualizing the words. Like when you have something in your hands, it's touch. Everything is helping your brain kind of coordinate and memorize those things, right? There's a word for it that I can't remember, but there's research out there behind it. For me though, I will also say some people record their poems out loud and listen to them, same way you memorize a song. Mm-hmm. So infamously, when I first started performing, it took me 4 weeks to get stage ready on a poem. That's how bad my memory was. I mean, I think my memory is still bad, but I've gotten down to a day, and here's how. I call it 3 by 3 by 3, which is I will read each line in the poem 3 times before moving to the next line. Then I will come back and read each stanza 3 times before moving to the next stanza and go all the way through the poem. Then I will read the poem in its entirety 3 times, 3 by 3 by 3. Then I will see how far I can get from the top. However far I can get, I keep doing that part until I've got that pretty common. Then I'll do 3 by 3, 8 by 3 again, and then come back and just until I can get all the way through the poem. It's completely off paper, and then I use 3 by 3 by 3 as a way to just pound it in. Now for me, 3 by 3 by 3 takes about 30 minutes. So I'll do 30 minutes, then I'll do the poem. Then I'll do 30 minutes and then do the poem. I'm already off paper, but I'll still be doing 3 by 3 by 3 to kind of further entrench it in my mind. Right. That's for people like me that are remedial with their memorization skills, but also it works. So.
Yeah, and it just definitely also goes to show you that like even if you think that you don't have a good memory, like there are ways that you can get around it. So
definitely. The method that I use is the same that I use with music. Like if it's a 16-bar verse, I'll chop it up into 4 different sections, 4 bars per section, and just memorize that first section, then start on the next part, then go back to the top, recite it, then, kind of just similar to yours. It's just repetition. I still use that to this day.
Yeah, definitely. And I always try to see how far I can get. So then I know that, like, okay, I've got that part. Now I got to work on the second half or whatever it is. Another thing I will say is adding movement into your poems are triggers for the next line too. A lot of poets do that. So for example, I have a poem that the line says, I have a soul full of words and a pen like a bat. And I always make this gesture when I get to that line, and that movement helps me remember the line that's following it. So it's like these little anchors in the poem that will help you keep it rolling along. And remember that just because you have it off page also doesn't mean that it's hitting the point where it's muscle memory yet. That's the goal you want to hit, is muscle memory, where you can just start spitting it and don't even have to think about what you're doing, that it just comes out like your favorite song. You know it so well that you don't even have to think about it. You can just jam it out. So yeah, awesome. Moving right along. All right, stage fright. I'm a bit of an introvert. How do I just jump into the zone? I guess without hiding behind a paper or a phone.
You rhymed, first of all. So extra points.
Marquis, you want to hit this one off?
Sure. Well, I'm an introvert too, but I guess it's something about fear in general that makes me want to confront it. So whatever I'm afraid of, I have to face it head on. I can't hide behind anything. I have to look at everybody in the crowd while I'm on stage. Like, regardless if they're, giving me faces like, man, this dude is terrible, or, if they're laughing or whatever the case may be, or even if they're with me, I have to look at everybody because I'm terrified of the crowd, but I have to let them know that I'm not scared of them.
See, I'm a little different. Like I can't look them in the eye unless it's an angry poem. If it's an angry poem, I can sit in their lap and look at them in their face and just be like, "You're gonna hear this today." But anything else, it's like I have to look at the forehead, or there's a trick that a lot of poets do where they scan the back of the room, so it looks like you're looking at the audience, but you're not really. So with me, I don't get stage fright really. I get nervous a little bit. That never really goes away. Like even poets that you see that are up there just owning it and just rocking it, they're still nervous. Don't let that fool you. Like that, you're still exposing this very vulnerable part of yourself, and in front of a lot of people, and you have to kind of let go of how the audience is receiving it and just do what you feel is right in your heart. For me, it's after I get off stage. When I get off stage, that's when I'm like, I'm terrified because I feel that so naked and everything. And I'm just like, oh, don't hurt me. Don't touch me. Don't just let me kind of collect myself back to center. And then now I can talk to you and I can engage and stuff. So some poets love to be hugged and tackled when they get off the stage. And I'm like, ah, when I get off. But for me, I'm not an introvert. So it's a little different for me. I'm extremely terrified when it's like a space that I don't know. So like I'm comfortable with the stage because I've done it so much. And that's one of the tips I will give you. Like the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get and the more confident you're going to be up there. But like, for example, I have a Y membership. I've had it for 3 months and have still not gone into the Y because I don't know how to use any of the weights. And I can get up in front of 500 people and talk about this very emotional, traumatizing thing and be fine, but I can't walk up to a front desk and ask, hey, can someone show me how to use the weights? You know what I mean? So I think it does go back to like a confronting a fear thing, and and it's just because I've not done it. Like the more you do it, the more comfortable you are gonna be, and the more you're gonna know that platform for you is home. And you're going to feel that love and the support as well, because once you get up there and realize no one's going to throw anything at you, or at least I hope they don't. If they do, you need to leave that venue and don't go back. Write them a very bad review on Yelp. But no, seriously, it's the more you get up there and realize that it's for the most part all love, that fear will start to kind of go away as well. Jay?
Yeah, I'm gonna say first of all, this is why we're Tribe, right? I tell people all the time I am much more nervous when I get off the stage than I am when I'm on the stage. But that's not the question. I am an introvert. I don't really get stage fright anymore, but I can definitely identify with starting off and being stage fright. The answer is in your question, which is I know you know that the answer is in your question, which is why you said it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit of an introvert. How do I just jump into the zone? Yeah, you just gotta jump.
You just gotta jump.
You just gotta jump. But that being said, I will say this. Always visualize success. Right. So if you know where you're going to be performing, anytime I go to a venue or I go to a slam or I go to feature somewhere, the first thing I do when I walk in, if the stage is accessible, I go to the stage and I stand on it. And if it's not a stage, if it's just a clearing, I go there and I face the audience and I imagine people in the chairs. I might even close my eyes and run the first few lines of the poem, and I visualize whatever success means to me for that night. So if you're scared of doing this for your first time, or I guess it's not your first time, but your first time without a paper or a phone and trying to, then visualize the venue, visualize success in that venue. When you practice visualizing that venue. Mm-hmm. Practice visualizing yourself on that stage and people receiving your poem very well. Mm-hmm. But other than that, yes, jump in and do it, regardless of how hard your heart is thumping. Jump in, regardless of what your mind is telling you about what the possible outcomes are. Ignore all of that. Jump in, trust yourself, trust your work, and do it. But always visualize success.
Definitely. Definitely take advantage of going up to the stage. Get there early and feel out the space, because I will say that you can be thrown off by the energy of a venue. There are times where I'm usually not nervous, and I walk into a space and I'm like, why is my heart doing this? What is going on? And it's the energy of that space. So I always try to get there a little early if it's a place I haven't been before, so I can feel it out and be like, okay, there's the stage. Get familiar with the space in which you are going to be in, and also keep in mind that everybody started out never hitting a mic before. So my first time was ridiculous. Okay, I was sitting in the back of the coffee shop, and it was getting ready to be my turn, and I had my papers and everything. I hadn't had it memorized or anything like that, and I spilt my coffee all in my lap, and they were getting ready to call my name, and this guy across from me saw it, and he turned around and looked at me and just went and I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm seconds away from them calling my name to come up. Am I just gonna be like, no, thank you? Or what am I gonna do? And I didn't even have time to think about it, because they called my name, and I just stood up and I grabbed my jacket and I wrapped it around the front of me, and I went up there, and my paper was like this, and I was reading and I was crying, but it was fine. It was fine. And now, I can get up there and do my thing and, be all right. So remember, everybody started out like this, so don't let that stop you. And people, especially people in the audience, if there's any poets in there, they'll know. They've been there. They've been in your shoes. It's nothing new. So don't let that stop you, and don't be embarrassed of that. I always love seeing poets that haven't been on a mic a lot, or maybe it's their first time. It's a beautiful moment to see them up there, and that courage and that bravery, and receiving all that love when they get off the stage too. So just know that everybody's rooting for you, definitely. All right, y'all. Next up, how do I find poetry around the U.S. just to do open mics? I imagine is a good start.
Facebook is a good tool, as well as Instagram. I use Instagram a lot. Follow those hashtags. Charlotte Poetry. What's the name of it?
Hashtag Charlotte Poetry.
Yeah, hashtag Charlotte Poetry. If you're wanting to come to Charlotte, we'd love to have you. Google is your friend too. You can always look events up there. Eventbrite is a great source. Meetup.com. If you aren't on there, get on there. There's a ton of stuff on Meetup. And if I don't know, I feel kind of conflicted with this question because I feel like
I'm very intrigued by the question because I'm wondering other things about the question.
Like I've known poets that have gone across states trying to hit up as many open mics as they can, but then they're always like, okay, there's 3 open mics happening in this city, so I'm gonna try to hit all 3 and like keep going. So they're on this like goal thing, right? But they don't get to like stop and take advantage of what's happening in that city. So first of all, if you do this, plan it to where you have padded time. Don't just try to hit every single open mic because you're going to miss out on opportunities. If you hit that mic and you do a poem and somebody in the crowd wants to book you, give them the chance to talk to you. So stick around, give yourself time to say, oh, okay, so there's this organization that helps poets in this city. Okay, here's my business card, and kind of like network with them. The other thing is too, don't just stop at open mics. Think a little bit bigger. Where can you be featured at? Get that press kit together and send them that and see if maybe now instead of like hitting up a bunch of open mics, and now maybe you're getting paid to come. And some places even pay for travel too. So you don't know unless you ask. So the worst they can say is no. And then you can just hit up an open mic around that area or stop in and listen to the poets or whatever. But yeah, I would definitely expand that and see if you can get booked, not just go to some open mics.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the question. I just wonder what else. I would love to ask a follow-up question on this. Like what is behind this? Are you trying to travel and find other open mics, or are you looking to find open mics when you travel? Or are you looking to get places where you can get booked? I think they've answered all those questions as far as like where to look. Google is your friend. Facebook is your friend. Hashtags are your friend. Looking up slams. Most open mics don't have websites. But if you look up slams in major cities, most slams have an open mic in front of the slam. Or if you're just looking to go listen to poetry, then you can go, if you're visiting Chicago, you can find out where the slams are and go there, and you could probably find the open mics and go there as well. But I'm kind of with Shane on this. If you're going to travel specifically to go to open mics, then maybe think about how you get featured and get some money from that. And also, if you're not looking to travel specifically for open mics, then always start with your own city and see what's going on in your own city in terms of open mics.
And also, if there's a forum or like a Facebook group or an organization that is in that area that is full of poets, or it's a poetry slam or something, send a message and see if they have a place for you to stay. You'd be surprised. There are plenty of people around the U.S. that have what's called as a poet house. So traveling poets who come in, they allow them to spend the night there. I don't know if you're familiar with couchsurfing.com, but it's like this site where you can find addresses, so they'll let you crash there that night for free. Sometimes they'll cook you dinner. Sometimes like they just want you to share a story. Especially if you're a poet, you could probably find someplace to crash. But safely ask the poets in that area and in that community if there's a poet house for you to crash at, because that is a thing.
Yeah. Preferably somebody in the city and trust them. But yes, there's that opportunity.
Definitely. Okay. All right. So we've got 2 more. I skipped one. I want to save it for the end because I think all of us are going to have a lot to say about that. So second to last question. When considering writing a poetry book, should you focus on a specific subject, content, and compile all you have, or can you write a book in chapter of subjects? So number one advice for if you're trying to put out a book of your work, think of it this way. If you're a band and you come out with a best of album, but no one knows who you are yet, then you're probably not going to sell a lot. But if you come out with an album that is around a theme and a specific thing, now you have a target market audience and you can market to that specific audience. For example, if I am a poet and only have one book or maybe no books yet, my very first book needs to be what's called a chat book, which means there's anywhere from 28 to like 40 pages, and it needs to be centered around a subject or a theme. And you'll want to do a few of those before you release an entire compilation of work, which is a full-length book, which is anywhere from like 40 to the hundreds of pages. So get very, very specific with what the theme of that book is, because then you're going to be able to market directly to that type of person. So if you know who your audience is, you can get in front of them. But if you're just shooting in the dark, then you're not going to sell as many copies. So the only example I can give you off the top of my head is my first book was called Fallen Heroes of the Awful Waffle. And it's all about people I met in waffle houses, right? So the book, the theme of this is Americana, but it's an Americana book that deals with poverty, it deals with loneliness, and it deals with late night kind of desperation. So I know who to target with this book. I know it's low to middle class Americans, probably women and men who might be have traveled a lot and has spent like a rough childhood, things like that. I know how to market my flyer. I know the language in which I need to speak on the flyer to speak their language to get them to pay attention to the book. But if it was a book about anything under the sun, I have no idea of how to create the marketing for it. Now, hopefully that makes sense. Like if you have a love poem book, then you know your target market is mostly going to be women, mostly older women, and you can focus on that. And there's statistics all over the internet, easy things that you can look up to find about your target market. So wedding couples, you could totally do like a whole campaign if you have like a book of love poems, a whole campaign about how this is the perfect book for an anniversary, the perfect book for a newlywed couple, perfect book for Valentine's Day. So there's ways that you can really push the book to make a bigger impact.
I'm going to focus on just a part of this question because I think Shane went pretty specific there for most of this answer. I'm going to focus on this word should and can. Should you focus on a specific subject? Can you write a book in a chapter of subjects? There really are no rules. You can do whatever you want to do. There is a book by Saul Williams that is one poem and very short, and it's like this big, right? I think said the shot. It's not that big. It's a little bigger than that. Said the shot into the head. Yeah. There's other poems like I think Erica Dawson just released a book called When Rap Spoke Straight to God, and it is a regular sized book, but it's all one poem. I haven't personally seen a book that is broken out in chapters like a book of fiction, but it can be done. It's just a matter of how good you do it and how tied to that artistic theme you are. But yes, I agree that as you're starting out, you want to be as specific to a demographic as possible and specific to a theme as possible. I will say that if you're looking to publish in the standard, academia, right? I talked to an editor of Bull City Press, and we were having a discussion at a table, and he was saying how when he gets chapbooks in, that sometimes he gets weary of the ones that are so specific in the theme, because it feels like to him sometimes he's getting 20 poems that are okay, that are tied to a theme, and he'd almost rather see a book that is not themed with 20 outstanding poems, right?
Yeah.
But that's publishing in academia, and if that's a different thing than marketing your self-published book in different areas. So I think everything is possible. And I didn't say this earlier, but I was thinking it. The words yet came up twice so far, and I think the word if came up once. To me, those questions normally, when you use them as a writer, are I'm not gonna say bad words, but like they're words that bring up doubt, right? Yet, if, should, can, and doubt is not necessarily good in your writing unless you're doing it on purpose. But as a writer outside the process, I love those words. I love the word yet. I think the word yet has so much power, right? You said I haven't published a book yet, right? That has power. I think what if is the greatest question that we can ask as artists. What if? What if we do this with this line? What if we do this here in this poem? As a person who creates, what if is powerful. Can and should, I think, are powerful in that you realize as you ask it that anything can be done. And should has limitations. Yeah. But anything can be done. Yeah. Right? How willing are you to see it through? How willing are you to put the power behind it that it needs to do the work? I'm trying to think of an analogy on the fly here. Kwame Brown, if you are familiar with basketball at all. Can Kwame Brown score 30 points in a game? It's possible, right? Michael Jordan, of course, Michael Jordan can do it. The power is in the yet and the if and the can. You can do whatever you want. But make sure you put the work and the power behind it to achieve that goal. Definitely.
Great feedback. I am glad that you said that too. Don't just throw some poems together because it fit that theme either. Like definitely have like each poem, like when you put your book together, you as the writer should feel like that those poems can stand on their own. You know what I mean? So take your time with it. You don't have to rush, I will say this, my next book does have 3 chapters and it's split, but it's a timeline kind of thing. So it's not different subjects. It's a location has changed. So one is called Inline, and it's poems about the same subject, but it's all poems that were created when I'm standing in line waiting for something. And then one is at a pizzeria, and it's all the poems written in that pizzeria. And then the third chapter is outside, and it's all the poetry venues where I'm outside writing poetry, but it's all about the same theme. So you can do things like that very easily. And just like you were saying, like you can do anything. I think whatever your goal is for the book, do you want to get a book out and because you feel like it would be a great achievement for you and you're not really concerned about sales? Do what your vision is for it. And even when you do that and you're not concerned with sales, think big, keep pushing it, and push for those sales too, and see how far you can take it. So yeah. Any thoughts, Marquis? No.
I'm actually just absorbing all this wisdom right now, applying it to my process. So
definitely. So our last question today is, and I say this for last intentionally, how do I find someone to support me like a mentor? Go ahead, Jay.
All right, I know that you're gonna have a lot to say about this, so I'm gonna jump in and say a couple things. I feel like these are 2 separate questions. How do I find someone to support me? A mentor, right? Support. It depends on what you want. Like Shane and I, and Marquis too, right? Yep. We are kind of accountability partners, and we meet twice a month and kind of talk through things that we're doing artistically and creatively, and we support each other and we push each other, right? So that's support. Mentorship can be that, but it can be more. And it depends on what you're looking for, and it depends on what you're asking. Yeah, I'm gonna start. I'll throw a couple things in, but I want you to jump in.
Yeah, definitely. I feel exactly what you said. So I feel like I'm not a person who is very set on like, oh, there's a step-by-step process that you have to do. I feel like every person is their own individual, and they have their own things that they need to overcome and their own processes, right? Which is why I love being a creative coach, because then I can connect with an individual, figure out what's blocking them, and get them where they need to be, right? Or where they want to be, where they deserve to be, you know? So I feel like there's two steps: the build your tribe, because no one does it alone. Anyone successful that you've seen, they have had help. They've had an accountability partner. They've had support. They've had somebody on a marketing team. They've hired somebody, or they have a friend, or they have a support system that helps them to keep going, especially in this line of work. I know poets that hate people, and that's okay. If you hate people, it's okay, but you still need a support system, because then that becomes toxic, because what we do is very emotional, and you don't want to keep the glorifying perception of the tortured artist, because the reality is that tortured artists don't create in a plethora. They don't thrive like that. Artists do their best work when they feel supported and they have the means to do so, or they're confident in their craft, or they're feeding their passion. So even if you have an artist or a poet who, maybe their lights just got turned off, the power just, power bill couldn't get paid, but their passion is still being fed, and their support system is still there that believes in their craft, they're going to thrive. But if you have a person who has a ton of income, but is miserable and has no support system, their work is not going to thrive. It's not going to fuel them to keep going. And it's going to be a very, very hard road. So I feel like, yes, it is different. There's support, which is building your tribe, which I highly suggest every creative, like, go out there, find your tribe, go to some meetups, go to some meetings, figure out, start to think about, who do I want in my circle? What kind of personality traits, what kind of things am I looking for in an accountability partner? What do I need? What kind of support do I need? And then when it comes to mentoring, once you have that tribe, and you can also get that support from a mentor, but for a mentor, keep in mind you're paying someone to help you achieve a goal. So normally with support, it's very vague, right? But with a mentor may lay out like a whole plan for you in order to get your book published, or get you to expand your writing to where you're not just writing. I'm just giving some examples of some clients I've had. One young lady was like, I keep writing depressing poems, and that's not that I'm depressed really right now. I just don't know how to write happy stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's go back and figure out what's stopping you from using your voice in this way, right? And get her through that specific issue or that specific problem. Helping another poet be a mentor herself, so coaching her on how to coach, so it's usually something centered around a goal, a very specific goal, or maybe it's a struggle. So it doesn't even have to be a goal. It could be a struggle that you're having that you are hiring someone to help you for. So, and I highly suggest that, because it is an investment. Like we were saying earlier, it is a great investment. I've done a lot of trade-offs too, where I'm like, someone wanted to hire me to coach them to put together their book, right? And I was like, well, I have a book I need help editing, and you're a great editor. It's funny, I had this conversation this morning actually, and he wanted to pay me, and I was like, wait, I need some editing done, so why don't we do a trade-off? So but it's specific things. Or centered around something that you need help with. So
Yeah, I think this goes back, as you said, Shane, to being willing to invest in yourself, and seeing the value of it and why. So the question is, how do you find, right? So how do you find someone to support you? Depending on what your community looks like, it might be easier than you think, or it might not be. But it's very important to find people that are like-minded, that have similar goals to you, not the same goals, but similar. And there can be some kind of trade-off between the two of you, where you can encourage one another, support one another, but talk through things. But for mentorship, if you don't know who, first of all, if you're in Charlotte, or if you're abroad and can work through telecommunications, right? Shane offers mentoring, and she's excellent at it. And I know that. How do I know that? Because we talk all the time, and some of the things that we talk about is the things that she's going over with her mentoring clients. So I know that. So that's number one. But if you're outside of that area and you want to know how you engage for mentoring, this is what I suggest. I suggest that you make a wish list of 3 people in your community that you admire for very specific reasons. And then make a list of what it is you want. Because sometimes people will approach us and say that they want mentoring, but we don't know what that means to you. What is it that you're looking for? For example, I know what my strengths are. I know that if you're looking for a very specific thing about your writing, I know I can help with that. But if you're looking for something else, if you're looking for like editorial skills, I'm not going to charge people for editorial skills, because I know there's people that are better at that than me. So what is it specifically that you want to work on with your writing, or with your performance, or with life coaching type of things? What specifically do you want? And what kind of engagement are you looking for? Some people just want to be able to send poems to somebody and get feedback back. Some people want in-depth conversations and in-depth personal one-on-one workshops. Other people are okay with talking on the phone. Other people want to be face-to-face. And some people want like something weekly, or some people just want something monthly. Like, have in mind specifically what you want to achieve, and specifically what availability you want from this person as a mentor, and then talk to them in the order of your rank. And it might be that they don't have the bandwidth, and which is okay. They might not have the bandwidth to take on a mentee. That's fine. And then move to the next person on the list, and start making decisions that way. But I would definitely suggest having clearly in mind what it is you want from your mentor.
And I will, one more thing to piggyback on that as well. You'll know that it's a good mentor if they're asking you questions right off the bat. So like for me, I'll do a free consultation, and I ask very specific questions that help me figure out how I can best serve you. And then I put together a complete roadmap, and I let you know up front, in order to achieve this goal or get you through here, this is how many sessions we need to have. And then making sure that your mentor has flexibility for you. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to charge. If you can get someone who won't charge you, that's great. But again, it's a lot of work, and people should be paid for it. But the flexibility to be like, okay, I can have a session this month, but I don't need to have a section, the next month. Like, I can come back when I'm ready to. If you get with a creative coach, that unless it's a course where you're signing up for, where it's like a 6-week long thing and it's very specific, it's the next month is hit and you haven't signed up for your second session, what's going on? That's kind of like a red flag, because it's like there's a desperation there. So you want a creative coach that's going to support you in a sense and not pressure you to the point of stress. Your creative coach should always feel like a comfort and challenge you, but not like a freak out. You know what I mean? So.
I feel like finding people that support you, people that actually are behind what you do. One of the ways to go about doing that is actually showing people what you do.
Ooh.
I find a lot of the people to this day that I've kept in contact with, those people that are wondering what I'm doing creatively, are those people that I've met at open mics. Like once I come down from the microphone, you know, we end up chatting it up, exchanging information, and I'm still in contact with those people to this day.
Yeah.
Even as it pertains to having a mentor, if you don't have it financially to have a mentor, I have what I call, I guess, virtual mentors. Like basically, I keep up with people that are where I want to be career-wise, in my confidence, my size, whatever the case may be, in any area that I would like to grow, and I follow those people. And you'll find that a lot of people give basic tips, things to get you started, and you know, you pretty much build on to that after a while. But if you need something more detailed, something more hands-on, I would encourage you to find a creative mentor.
Definitely, and that's a great. I do that as well, y'all. There are people I follow that I get like resources all the time from them. There's business coaches that I follow that no, I have not paid for their services yet. That doesn't mean I won't, you know, but they're still sending emails and they're giving support and they're giving like free tips and resources because that builds trust with their clients or their potential clients, right? So I do the same with my mailing list. You know, that's what the summit's about. I'm sending, you know, we're here, you know, providing a resource and access because we believe in it, and but also it's a level of trust, you know, and it's enriching that poetry community to feel that support that clearly a lot of poets do need, especially in April for National Poetry Month. But definitely follow some people that you admire. Set up your news feed on Facebook, to be specific, where you're just seeing positive reinforcement throughout the day instead of people bickering or any drama. I did that probably in the beginning of this year, and it changed my life just doing that. So definitely take advantage. If you see any ads that pop up that's like, hey, sign up for this and get this free ebook or blah, blah, don't hate on those people. Put your email in. You can always unsubscribe if you don't want to follow them. But 9 times out of 10, the people that I do give my email, I'm still on their mailing list because they're giving good content and they're helping me grow as an individual as well. So definitely. Well, y'all, I hope that has helped. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. So 2 have stuck with us and liked. And liked it, and others will watch it afterwards. But thank you so much for sticking in with us.
Yes, definitely, and keep writing. You're almost there.